This character could be a massive new addition to Final Fantasy XIV. 7.2 blew my wildest expectations out of the water when it came to its new main story quest, and it's largely because of a new, well, quote-unquote new character that was, quote-unquote, introduced with 7.2. Let's talk about Sphene. Hello everybody, I'm Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming. Now that the dust has settled on 7.2's main story quest, at least at this point, I think it's safe to say the reception to this patch has been largely more warm and welcoming compared to 7.0 and 7.1. And while those stories had their defenders, this one just seems to be generally more well-received, and I think it's understandable why. It's just really well written, and the character at the forefront of it all is the new Sphene, the original Queen of Alexandria. This story was focused, and while not only developing the characters of Calyx and setting the stage for 7.3, it put a lot of grunt work into actually developing the new Sphene, and I don't think that's for a temporary reason like, oh, just for 7.3 payoff and then we move on. I think new Sphene is endgame. Now, the way they developed this character is rather interesting because we're not exactly starting from zero here. They are utilizing some of the motivations and development we had with Endless Sphene back in 7.0. But they make the important distinction that, hey, while all these Sphenes originated from, well, as new Sphene, those other Sphenes made different choices compared to this one. And they really try and drive home the fact that this is essentially a different character, just with that overwhelming urge to protect the people of Alexandria. Now, there's two real main fates for, I guess three, for what could happen with Sphene here. Either she just dies in a heroic sacrifice, and alright, you can do that, right? This game has been kind of fiending for a big main character death for a while that isn't just a villain, but I don't think that's the play to go for when it comes to this Sphene. I think she just simply has too much potential as a character for the future to do that. You could just have her become the new Queen of Alexandria again, but then what does that do for Galulja and his entire story arc? No, to me, it feels as if they are setting Sphene up to be essentially the G'raha Tia for this new narrative arc, where she is closely associated with the people we are trying to actively defend, but in the end of it all, she will quote-unquote manage to walk forward with her people, or beside them, by letting them be their own entity now. They're no longer her people. They kind of drive this point home early into the MSQ. And while there is development later on that she wants to defend her people and walk beside them, I think the lines of dialogue they used here are rather important.
But they're not my people anymore, are they? Their city, their way of life, even the ground upon which they tread. I am a stranger to it all.
Bye! Not Queen Sphene!
I do not know that boy, nor does he know me. No one does. Another harsh reminder that I have no place here. Yet, no matter how much things have changed, I am happy. I am. For Alexandria has endured. Our sacrifice was not in vain.
Another harsh reminder that I have no place here. And obviously this story is going to go in the direction, kind of already has, that she wants to defend her people even if she feels a bit of a stranger in a strange land. I just don't think the ending of this story is her resuming her old duties as the queen. I think that's Galulja. They've been building that since 7.0. We're going into a massive new story arc for Final Fantasy XIV. We're no longer in the Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc. We need new characters to establish a crew, essentially, for this new arc, because I just can't see us only using the Scions again. They will be there, sure, but we need new characters to really jumpstart this new arc, and I think Sphene, fits that bill. I don't think it's going to be Wu Clement. She's one of the two leaders of Tulia Lol, right? And also, let's be fair here, while there are some defenders of Wu Clement, I think it's fair to say a lot of people out there aren't particular fans of that character. I think she'll fulfill that Aymeric role, and I've kind of talked about that since 7.0, where she will stay behind with her people, and we only just see her and talk to her in passing whenever we just happen to be in that corner of the world in the future. They've deliberately written Sphene in such a way to where she doesn't really have a home right now. Sure, you can say Alexandria, but it's also really different compared to her Alexandria. And everyone she kind of knew and loved, besides just the concept of the people, are dead. That was particularly driven home with the Zelania fight. The character herself also kind of embodies a what-if story for the original 7.0 Endless Sphene, where what if instead of trying to save her people and only her people all by herself, what if she just simply asked for help, and I'm sure we'll see the fruits of this storyline bear in 7.3 with some big climax, right? But when it comes to the character of Sphene, they took so much time and put so much attention in just making her a likable character. Building up those insecurities, building up those motivations, and also stealing her resolve for the future. They did a lot of legwork here when it came to her overall story arc here. She's already set on facing the future, and not just a raid leader like she was in the Zelania fight. She wants to be an active participant and help her people, and it also just works with her storyline overall. Like someone who was on ice for the longest time, not even just 400 months in the Halo Combat Evolved cryo chamber, but also she was bedridden for quite a while there at the end of her reign because of the sickness. Going out on an adventure is like a natural follow-up for that storyline, at least in my eyes. They're also kind of like really hinting, and I use hinting lightly here because it's pretty much just saying that she's going to be a trust character in the future. She talked about how she used to be pretty decent with magic, and then after the Zelania fight, you can talk to her again, and she talks about how she has to find a grimoire. The line specifically is, "I shall take the opportunity to review the books from the castle, and one grimoire in particular." Now, for those who may not be aware, there's a lot of Final Fantasy IX references in this game, especially in Dawntrail, and Sphene is pretty much a reference to the character of Garnet/Dagger from Final Fantasy IX, the main princess. Ring a bell? The main princess of Alexandria. And in that game, she was a magic user, and also a summoner. Well, it just so happens that Final Fantasy XIV has a job that fits that bill, but I don't think she's just going to be a summoner. I think she'll fulfill a role more similar to an Arcanist. Just for flexibility in the trust system, I think she'll be able to either DPS or heal. Healing with Scholar, DPSing with Summoner. That's the role I think they're going to take for her, and ever since Alphredo job change, we don't really have one anymore, so it kind of fits the bill. And heck, the whole Zelania arc was essentially, one, Sphene realizing all the people she knew and loved are dead, but also realizing she doesn't want to be a passive participant in the future events. She wants to be active, she wants to be in the front line, she wants to be able to contribute somehow, and not just raid lead. It really does feel as if they're trying to build her up to be a main party member going into the future. And I think one of the main plays for this new narrative arc is they want us to build a crew of people from all the different shards/reflections. For the first, we have Reen and Gaia. For the 13th, we have Zero and Golbez. And then for the 9th, probably it's going to be Sphene. Especially since this new narrative arc seemingly is going in the direction of us shard hopping, what with us already addressing another shard this early on into it. Having a crew of people representing each of the different shards, that makes a lot of sense to me. We represent the source, and then those other characters representing their respective shards. Whether this all comes to fruition in the next expansion, I don't know, but I just think that Sphene is going to be the main takeaway from Dawntrail. While 7.0 was really building up the character of Wu Clement and also Kona with 7.1, the story of Dawntrail largely feels, at this point in time, now that we have 7.2 and likely what 7.3 will end up covering, it largely feels like the story of Sphene to me. I know not everyone liked Sphene back in 7.0, I did. Like, yeah, was it a bit of a retread on what we already covered in Endwalker? Yeah, sure, but I thought it was a pretty decent retread. And with some recontextualization now with 7.2 and just the development they put into Sphene as a character, I think it's going in a direction where it's unique enough but also well told enough, which is finally nice to be able to say again, by the way. Just as an aside, I think this is the best way to, like, get something good out of a particularly bad situation. And, like, when you really think about it, we got through a lot of story for Sphene already just in 7.2. We had the Stranger in a Strange Land arc, we had her feeling helpless and insecure, then we had her resolve herself and decide to face the future, while also admitting she still wants to defend her people even if they aren't technically her people anymore. It's like, it kind of took all of 7.0 for us to get there for Wu Clement, and we already are there with Sphene, and it falls short of storyline. And now, in like 7.3, we can just have a bunch of payoff. Because while 7.2 in my eyes was really good, it was a lot of setup for what ideally will be a lot of great payoff in 7.3. I think they want this to be a little bit, like, up in the air right now, where it's like, will she just return to being the queen? Will she die? Or will she pull a Graha and come along with us? Stay tuned to find out. Like, there are some things suggesting all of them. I just think the far more likely option, especially with Final Fantasy XIV's track record in terms of how to write a story, I think the play they're going for is to have her be a main character going into the future. Whether that is followed up up immediately remains to be seen. It could be a case where we have to do all of 8.0, and then afterwards, we call the crew together, get Zero, Golbez, get Sphene, the like, you know. I kind of think they'll be a bit more immediate with Sphene, but again, it's not like this is locked in 100% confirmed, it's just the direction I think they're likely going to go here. And for how controversial and polarizing Dawntrail ended up being, like I said before, I think this is like the best way out of it. Tell a far more cohesive, focused storyline, while making use of arguably the best element of 7.0, but recontextualizing in such a way to feel like a new character here, while not throwing away all of that development and all that backstory. So at the end of it all, when we walk away from Dawntrail, likely with Sphene now in the party, whether she becomes a quote-unquote scion or not, or just a companion with us, we can at least look back in Dawntrail and be like, you know what, at least we got something good out of this. There's another narrative choice they elected to utilize within 7.2 that I think lends some credence to this, and that was their decision not to really drive home the relationship between Sphene and Wuklamad. That could have easily have been the direction they had gone, but they actively chose, whether or not this was because of feedback taken from 7.0 and 7.1, or this was the direction all along. They chose at the end of it all to have us, the Warrior of Light, be her main companion in 7.2. Like, we're the one she confides in most of the time. We're the one that is there for the vast majority of her development here. That feels deliberate, and if you were going to just either kill her or keep her in Alexandria moving forward, I feel as if you would develop her with Wuklamad instead, but they didn't. They chose to have that development be done with us, which makes sense if she's going to be accompanying us in the future. It also makes sense because I feel like a lot of people, while we all love the Scions, we don't want them just to be thrown in for the sake of having them, and we need new characters to fall in love with. We need new characters to want to see the story unravel with. I think Sphene checks a lot of boxes in that regard. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on this little theory. Do you think that's the direction they're gonna go? Do you think they're gonna go in a different direction? What would you like to say? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again!